Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're tackling a universal problem that literally every single one of us faces. We all want to constantly increase the quantity and, the quality of everything we consume. We want the absolute best stuff, and we want a whole lot of it. But of course, there is a catch. Okay, let's dive into this. We can't have it all simply because our spending is fundamentally constrained by our wallets. To keep things super relatable today, we're going to use a classic two-good model, pizza and Pepsi. It's the ultimate Friday night dilemma, right? But more importantly, it's basically the perfect baseline for us to figure out exactly how we make economic choices. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll be covering what you can afford, mapping your preferences, finding the perfect choice, calculating the math of happiness, and finally, reacting to life's changes. And don't worry, all these concepts are going to build on each other logically to give us one really unified picture by the end. Section 1. What you can afford. The limits of our wallet. Let's look at the basic rules of the economic game. First up, we absolutely need to define the budget constraint. Put simply, this is the hard limit on the consumption bundles, or basically the specific combinations of goods that you can actually afford, based entirely on your current income. It is the hard boundary line. It really comes down to the ultimate showdown, doesn't it? What human beings intensely desire versus the cold, hard reality of a limited income. We always end up consuming less than we actually desire, just because our wallets put a very strict, undeniable boundary on our spending. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what that boundary looks like. So imagine you have a monthly income of $1,000. Let's say a pizza costs $10 and a pint of Pepsi is $2. If you went wild and spent it all on pizza, you'd get 100 pizzas down at point A. Spend it all on Pepsi, you'd get 500 pints up at point B. The line connecting them is your budget constraint. Any combination sitting on that line costs exactly $1,000. And notice the slope of that line. It's 5. That is your market trade-off. Basically, every time you want just one more $10 pizza, you literally have to give up exactly 5 $2 pints of Pepsi. Section 2. Mapping your preferences. Human satisfaction on a graph. Time to shift gears from what we can buy to what we actually prefer to buy. To visualize these preferences, economists use a really clever tool called an indifference curve. This is just a curve showing all the different bundles of pizza and Pepsi that make you equally happy. If you swap around combinations anywhere on the exact same curve, your overall level of satisfaction hasn't changed one bit. You are completely indifferent between those choices. Now, there are 4 golden rules for these curves. First, higher curves are always preferred to lower ones. Second, they slope downward. Third, they never, ever cross. And fourth, they are bowed inward. Let's quickly break down why they look and act this way. What if the curves did cross? Well, if point A and point B sit on the exact same curve, it means you're equally happy at either spot. Now, if point B and point C are on another curve together, that makes them equal to each other too. Logically, following that math, A and C must make you equally happy, right? But think about point C for a second. It clearly gives you way more pizza and more Pepsi than point A. And since we know consumers basically always prefer more goods to less, this scenario is mathematically and logically impossible. That's why indifference curves absolutely cannot cross. So, why are they bowed inward? It's really all about how hungry or thirsty you are in the moment. The slope of this curve at any given point is called the marginal rate of substitution, or MRS. Up at point A, you have tons of Pepsi, but barely any pizza. You are starving. You'd gladly trade away 6 whole pints of Pepsi just to get your hands on one more pizza, so your MRS is 6. But way down at point B, you are completely stuffed with pizza, but incredibly thirsty. Now, you'd only give up 1 pint of Pepsi for a pizza. The MRS drops to 1. The curve bows inward because you naturally value the things you have less of way more highly. Section 3. Making the perfect choice, where desire meets reality. Let's merge these two ideas together and see what happens. This is where we get our real aha moment. Consider where the budget line actually meets the preference curves. Sure, you'd absolutely love to be way up on the highest curve, I3, but that's a total fantasy. It's completely outside your budget. You could technically afford point B over on curve I1, but that leaves you settling for a lower level of happiness. The true magic happens right there in the middle, the optimum. It's the exact point where the highest possible indifference curve, which is I2, perfectly touches or is tangent to your budget line. Right at this spot, your internal valuation, your marginal rate of substitution, perfectly matches the market's literal price tags. Section 4. The math of happiness. Calculating utility. Let's slow things down just a little bit and look at the actual numbers behind this concept. Up until now, we've been using what's called the ordinal approach. That just means ranking bundles, like simply saying, hey, I prefer bundle D over bundle A. But there is another way to look at this, called the cardinal approach. This method actually tries to measure your satisfaction using an abstract numerical unit called utility. Let's see this math in action. Imagine you have a budget of 24 rupees. Good X costs 2 rupees and good Y costs 3 rupees. Now think about the columns labeled MU. That stands for marginal utility, which is just the extra happiness you get from buying one more unit. Notice how that utility drops as you buy more? That's diminishing marginal utility at work. The real trick to optimizing your choice numerically is equalizing your marginal utility per dollar spent. So focus on the two columns labeled MU over P. To win this game, we need the numbers in those specific columns to match perfectly, while making sure we spend exactly our 24 rupee budget. So, the crucial point is finding that mathematically perfect combination. Let's do the math. If we buy 6 units of X at 2 rupees each, that's 12 rupees. Add 4 units of Y at 3 rupees each, and that's another 12 rupees. Add them up, and the total spent is exactly our budget, 24 rupees. Now, if you check the table for 6 units of X and 4 units of Y, you'll see their marginal utility per price ratio is exactly equal at 5. Boom! We have perfectly maximized our happiness, literally down to the mathematical unit. Section 5. Reacting to life's changes. Plot twists in the market. What happens when the rules of the game suddenly shift? Imagine you get a big raise at work. Your income goes up, so your budget line naturally shifts completely outward, to the right. You can afford more stuff. Now, usually, you'd respond by buying a bit more of everything. But notice the new optimum point. It actually features less Pepsi. Why in the world would that happen? Well, because sometimes when we get a bit richer, we actually ditch certain things. Economists call these inferior goods. Maybe with that brand new salary, you upgrade your lifestyle, ditch the Pepsi completely, and buy vastly more pizza instead. But what if your income stays exactly the same, and just the price of Pepsi drops? This causes your budget constraint to rotate. Since pizza hasn't changed price, you can still only afford 100 pizzas if you buy 0 Pepsi. So point A stays securely anchored right where it is. But if you spend all your money on Pepsi now, you can afford a staggering 1,000 pints instead of 500. The line swings way out to point D. That completely changes the slope, which allows you to reach a brand new, much higher indifference curve and lock in a totally new optimum. We have covered a massive amount of ground in this explainer today, from intersecting lines to the literal math of human happiness. It definitely gives you a highly structured, analytical way of looking at how we behave as consumers. But I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative question. Are your daily choices really this logical? Think about it. The next time you're on a grocery run, standing in the aisle staring at 2 different products, ask yourself, are you subconsciously calculating your marginal utility per dollar? Are you trying to perfectly tangent your indifference curve to your budget line in your head? The answer might actually surprise you. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the hidden logic behind the choices you make every single day.